Hello everyone, we are students from the Experimental Archaeology class. Our goal in experimental archaeology is to gain a better understanding of the past through performing experiments. Now, although our class takes more of an educational point of view, it is important to note that experimental archaeology is recognized as a science. So we are asking you to help us with analyzing and gathering data from pot shards that we excavated during our most recent visit to the Moravian Deputy Center. Since you are students in a quantitative analysis class, we'd be happy to have your help.
To understand the importance of our experiment, you have to understand the Moravian Deputy Center. The Deputy Center is located around 30 miles from the college. It is located just north of the town of Roseto in the Poconos area. It serves as an outdoor laboratory for Moravian students. Previous students in our class have created kilns at the Deputy Center and made twine to build a shelter. Moravian University currently owns land and uses it for subjects such as environmental science. Originally, the land was occupied by the Lenni Lenape. Besides the native indigenous peoples who inhabited this region, Europeans began to settle the area in the 1760s. From a geological point of view, the Deputy Center is located near the Kidney Ridge Mountains. The Kidney Ridge Mountains are formed by hard quartzite rocks, and due to weathering, the Deputy Center consists of soil that is very rocky, yet is able to be farmed. Overall, the Deputy Center is a great place. Just don't get stranded in the mud for 2 hours like we did.
For our experiment, we dug up artifacts on a previous piece of cultivated farmland at the Deputy Center. Our professors, Dr. Bardsley and Dr. Paxton, prepared the plot of land for us to dig up. We found various materials here, such as nails, bricks, and even a Happy Meal toy. But here we are concerned with the pot shards. Specifically, our question is what was cooked within these pots. We'd like you to do this by determining what kind of lipids you find in these pots. Nick and Sarah will tell you more about these different kinds of lipids in the video later on. The kind of pot shards we found would have been seen within the indigenous communities and also the early English settlers. It is important to note that these indigenous communities would not have regarded Northampton County as a permanent settlement, rather ground for hunting and fishing. Therefore, many of these shards that were found would have been from the early English settlers rather than the indigenous peoples.
Before we get to the information about the artifacts, it is important to talk about the way we found these shards that you will be examining. First, I will talk about the stratigraphy and how it gives us information about the artifacts. Stratigraphy is the study of accumulated layers that are in the ground and their relationship with the time period that is associated with. The process of stratification is when layers of soil form over one another over time, and a layer that was once on top is then deposited in the ground. Therefore, the layers that are deeper in the ground are older, while the layers that are closer to the surface are younger. This helps us since it allows us to date the artifacts that are deposited in certain layers and gives us estimates for when an artifact was last used. This is the case with our mock excavation since the pot shards that we found were from two different layers. It is important to keep in mind that since the shards that you will be handling are from two separate layers, the shards will tell you about two separate time periods. This will be helpful when you are examining the artifacts since it is another way that you can date the objects at the molecular level. Next, we are going to discuss the mock excavation that we performed that gave you these artifacts. Although during our excavation it was difficult to tell when one layer ended and another began, but this reminds us to keep the depth of the artifacts in mind when we collect them. These different time periods will have different dietary contents that are imprinted on the shards.
Mock excavation was an experiment where our professor set up a 1 by 1 meter excavation pit with some artifacts separated into layers to simulate the stratification process. The students' part of the work was to excavate the site, discover the most amount of artifacts we could, analyze the soil searching for clues for different types of layers, number the artifacts, and try to draw a diagram of layers classifying each layer by what we found, what kind of material it is the layer formed by, and the time period. Our major findings were pottery shards from different time periods in post-colonial and indigenous layers, and a fire pit in the indigenous layer.
Prior to the arrival of Europeans, the diets of the indigenous people relied on what was available to them through hunting and foraging, as well as what could be grown with the introduction of gardening in the middle to late woodland period. These plants could include various types of grain, squash, and later on corn. Specifically the three sisters, which would be corn, beans, and squash. The meat consisted of a variety of mammals, birds, and fish. The fish were more dependent on where exactly they were. So, for example, they'd be able to find shad, but they wouldn't necessarily be able to find Atlantic salmon. Mammals in this area included deer, beaver, bear, and rabbit. Deer tends to be very lean. Beaver and bear tend to be fattier of the animals. With birds, it's turkey and duck. Duck tends to be fattier than turkey.
With the arrival of Europeans and the colonization of the area also came the arrival of many new foods that were introduced. For instance, bacon and pork were common because of the abundance and long preservation life of salted meat, as well as the warmer climate of the colonies. During the 1700s, meals typically consisted of pork, beef, lamb, fish, shellfish, chicken, corn, beans, vegetables, fruits, and baked goods. Sometimes a stew could be made from pork and dried or fresh vegetables. Fish was also frequent because it was inexpensive or free and was a good source of protein. Most early American dishes were characterized by European methods of cooking, but using Native American ingredients. One popular method that individuals in the post-colonial era preserved meat and poultry was potting. It involved boiling or baking meat until it was tender, stirring in spices and butter or animal fat. They then packed it into earthenware jars and sealed them with a layer of melted butter or animal fat poured over the top. The same was done for fish. It was fried in oil and sealed in vinegar with a layer of oil on top. Olive oil came to the colonies. It was very expensive and was not produced here. The other primary fats used in cooking and baking were butter and lard. Flax was introduced to the colonists, and flaxseed oil was introduced. Fats and oils derived from animals were also used to cook many colonial foods. It is also believed that from the 17th and 19th centuries, enslaved people brought and adapted many cooking techniques and ingredients from their native lands to their lives in America, such as slow-cooked stews and deep frying. Some plants have a high proportion of saturated fats containing such fatty acids as palmitic acid and the most common saturated fatty acid found in plants. Plant oils are a mixture of triglycerides and are used as a storage form of energy in seeds.
All right, so I'm here to talk about the major complications that you may come across during this analysis. So diagenesis is the first kind, and this is when things on a chemical, physical, and biological level will collect into the soil, and the substances that are in the soil will collect onto the archaeological material. So here I drew a little picture with a pot and some dirt around it and some grass up here and some water up here and different arrows going every which way. So just to emphasize how the stuff around the artifact will affect the pot and how the pot itself will affect the gunk around it, like the dirt and the water and the grass. Furthermore, there was a lot of dirt when we dug up these shards, so we recommend cleaning them off, but we understand that you can't get all the dirt off. So if you can, grab a piece of dirt, like a pure piece of dirt from one of the shards and test it itself to see the levels in that dirt, and thus you can see what not to look for in the actual pot shards themselves.
Another issue is that we don't know what types of foods were cooked in these pots. Here's a list of different fats and their fatty acid relative percentage abundance by fat or oil source. However, the food cooked in these charts may or may not appear on the list. Furthermore, multiple types of food could have been cooked in these pots, so there may be more than one fat that shows up in your results. Because of this, please include most of the likely candidates of fats in your results and not just one individual fat.
Yep. So fats usually occur around the rim of the pot. So I drew three little pictures here. It is thicker toward the top. So the shards that you find that are thicker towards the top, like I said, they may or may not contain more fats. It's more likely that they will contain more fats. However, there's no telltale sign or formula that these things will occur. Second, the place that fats are more likely to occur is in like the little dugout, the little lip thing, where the base connects to the wall. There's a second place that you'll find fats or lipids, but like I said, there's no formula. They could occur anywhere, but the least likely place they will occur is at the very bottom of the plate. So just because your plate itself doesn't have a lot of fats or acids could just mean that you didn't get a very good piece, or that maybe look toward the top of the rim more.
So those were some of the major complications that may occur. However, there are some minor ones that we would like you to be aware of. First, we dug up these pots with our bare hands and without gloves, so the oil from our skin may or may not have appear in your results. Professor Bardley's dog also licked some of the pots, so be aware of dog saliva in your results.
Yep. And lastly, depending on where or how much food is cooked in the pots, some shards may be more fat and oil rich than others. Just because something or one doesn't show that much doesn't mean the whole pot itself didn't cook anything. So be on the lookout for that. Good luck and thank you guys.
So once again, we are asking for your help with this experimental archaeology project. We think that as students with a background in a science class, you would be qualified for helping us out. So thank you for watching our video.